All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. All right, man, we got some interesting news around Canelo Alvarez and also Errol Spence Jr., who says that he is very open to having a fight with Canelo Alvarez after he defeats Terence Bud Crawford. And David Benavidez's promoter, Samson Leskovich, hinting that Canelo may be positioning himself where that fight could take place. Now, before I get into that, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. Shout out to everybody that is subscribed to the channel. If you're not, consider doing so at the end of the video if you like the content. Also, hit the like button, and thank you to everybody that has been a supporter of the channel through all the different conversations we've had. Your consistency really does mean a lot. So thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. But let's get into this boxing talk because this is the best sport in the world. I have been a lifelong fan of the sport of boxing. As long as I can remember, boxing has been my favorite sport. Every once in a while, I would get into, stints of watching basketball or stints of watching football, in Chicago as a Chicago Bear and Chicago Bulls fan. But no other sport has kept my interest for as long and as consistently and to the extent that boxing has. And we are right now in a very, very good time in boxing. This, I do believe, is a bit of a golden age in boxing. We are starting to see some very, very talented fighters in some very, very good fights. And it looks like it's going to be that way all of this year, that it was for half of the last year. And it could continue because we've just got so much talent. Now, one of the biggest fights that are going to take place, or let me start it this way. Some of the biggest names that we're talking about that could really make this era excellent are Canelo Alvarez and Errol Spence Jr. Canelo Alvarez is the undisputed champion at 168 pounds, has been fighting lackluster fights over the last several years, but still maintains the name recognition and the excitement factor that will get people excited for a fight that could be the one that they actually want to see. And you have Errol Spence Jr., who is fighting Terence Crawford on July 29th in Las Vegas in a fight against a guy that many people consider to be the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world and have thought that about him for several years. And if he is able to get past that fight, Errol Spence Jr. says that he would be very open to fighting Canelo Alvarez in a fight that would definitely be one of the biggest fights in boxing history if Canelo Alvarez were actually willing to take the fight. Now, people should understand that this is not a fairy tale because Showtime, according to Tom Brown of TGB, who's the main promoter for the PBC fights that air on Showtime and air on Fox, had stated that they had offered a package to Canelo Alvarez for a fight that included Jermall Charlo. And if he beat Jermall Charlo, a fight with Errol Spence Jr. at a catch weight of 164 pounds. So this is not anything that is a fairy tale. Now, Errol Spence Jr. has mentioned this again, that is a fight that he would want. He said, of course, he's not focusing on that until after you get past the fight with Terence Crawford, which, is not going to be an easy fight. Or it could be an easy fight. It is a fight on paper that is is definitely a challenge for Errol Spence, and it's a challenge for Terence Crawford too. But a move to get to the Canelo Alvarez fight, that would be an amazing, amazing fight. And I think a fight that people who think is an unfair fight, but I don't think is. If you look at the way that Canelo Alvarez fights, if you look how Errol Spence Jr. fights, if you look at the real size that Canelo Alvarez is, I mean, his actual size. And by that, I mean, don't pay attention to the weight class he fought in. Look at the size of Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez began his career, he was very young, but he started it at 146. But I think really he's 154. He was a 154 pounder, right now he's probably still a 160 pounder, a small 168 pounder. He's really not a 175 pounder. And that really did show very, very clearly in his fight with Dimitri Bivol, who was just too long, too tall, too long to really allow Canelo Alvarez to get off anything against him, just because of the range and the height that Dimitri Bivol had. Now, obviously, a lot of people are saying that the fight that they want to see for Canelo Alvarez is the fight with David Benavidez. And Samson Leskovich, who is the promoter of David Benavidez, has been very vocal over the last month or so about making that fight and the offer that they would make. There is word on the street that Samson Leskovich said, though, that he knows that the fight between David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez is not going to happen. However, hinted that there was a possibility that Canelo Alvarez may be fighting again with the PBC soon. And now, if you're not familiar with the contractual situation with Canelo Alvarez is free to fight at this point. He is free to fight with either DAZN or the PBC, and he's depending on the fight, he's shown a willingness to fight with either one of them. Said that working with Al Haymon was very easy. He enjoyed working with Al Haymon and has no problem working with Al Haymon in the PBC in the future for other fights. Now, and I do believe he had like a 3-fight deal that he had signed with DAZN, and that particular fight contract ended with Canelo after the Gennady Golovkin 3 fight, which DAZN had been trying to push for years and years and years, like a dog on a bone for some reason. But whatever the case is, that fight is over. And the question now is, what is Canelo Alvarez going to do? Now, obviously, there's the Dimitri Bivol fight. If he does that, then more than likely Canelo Alvarez is just going to lose that fight, and he's going to lose a whole lot more fanfare than he already has by losing to him and hiding out on DAZN like he's been on for the last several years. He's going to lose even more than that. It makes more sense for him to fight a winnable fight against somebody on the PBC, and to do that eventually for a real big fight. And Errol Spence Jr., if he gets past Terence Crawford, is I think he's the perfect candidate for that, because Errol said, look, man, he ain't looking for tune-ups. He's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time. And that fight would be really big money for especially if him coming off of a win or a couple wins against Terence Crawford. Anyway, I like the idea. I've been a proponent of that idea for years. I think that that people overestimate and misjudge people based on the weight classes. And you see it throughout boxing history, guys coming up from 135, or 130 becoming welterweight champions, 130 guys coming up from 135 becoming middleweight champions, guys from 147 pounds moving up to being 175 pound champions. You had Roy Jones Jr. that moved up from 154 and became a heavyweight champion. There's a lot of stuff to that. But anyway, to those moving up in size and the skill sets of people, and what they're able to do against the specific opponents that are in front of them. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.